So my name is Chip Dodd. I'm with Support Services of Virginia. So we're an IDDD waiver provider here in Virginia Beach, Danville, Lynchburg, Eastern Shore, kind of all around the southern part of the state. We do group home, sponsored residential, in-home, and all the day supports, and therapeutic consultation. So we've been around since '94, pretty big company. Been through the ringer a few times if you saw my presentation yesterday. And so Karen, because she knows I'm a complete data geek, junkie, love Excel. I'm like that weird person that could just go into a room and come out twitching like Howard Hughes after looking at numbers. She likes to have me come in sometimes and geek out on you a little bit to kind of inspire you to maybe start looking at data and using them to tell stories. Because at the end of the day, that's really what we're doing. We're helping people with disabilities, and we need the ability to tell the story to many different people, from payers to families to your employees. Okay, so we're going to get into that. So let me start off with, has anybody heard this before? I'm not sure if this was just me or if this is everybody. Has anybody, especially in your financial department, hand you a document and say, don't eat the numbers? Anybody? Okay. So when I first got to the company, my stepdad, Paul, which I love to death, was the, let's call it bookkeeper, because CFO is probably not the right word. So he would always hand me a document, like a financial statement or whatever, or I would ask a question like, hey, can we afford a new van? Can we do this or do that? And he would say, well, probably not, because they call him the CF no, right? That's typical in most companies. So they hand you the document, and you're looking at these financial statements, and I would go, oh, look, we're profitable. Yeah, we got plenty of money. He's like, whoa, don't eat the numbers, okay? There was 5 pay periods. I'm sorry, there's 2 pay periods and 5 pay days in that month. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, we bill weekly, right? So some months have 5, I think it was Mondays or something, and then there was 2 pay periods. But then the next month, there might be 3 pay periods, right? Because there's 26, and it doesn't divide by 12 very well. And so one month we look rich, and one month we look poor. So every time you hand me a document, don't eat the numbers. So here I am, I forgot to tell you, okay, so I ended up being the owner of the company through the most horrible way you can ever become the owner of a company, is your mom owns it, and then she passes away of cancer, right? So I'm 32 years old, I have 185 employees, I'm freaking clueless because I was bartending coming into this job, and here I can't eat the numbers, okay? So she had a wonderful company, helps people with disabilities, but the company did not have the behind-the-scenes Excel, math, CFO component, hence can't eat the numbers, right? So here we are. Oh, that's the other thing I mentioned to tell you. I do these presentations, and I tailor every single one to every single audience. The photos you're going to see are photos of my life over the last month. And I think if I was you, what would be the information that I would like to get in this conference so that I can leave here and do something different Monday than I did today or yesterday, right? So hopefully at some point you'll take notes and do stuff, because what I'm going to give you is actionable things that you can actually specifically go back and do no matter what your job is, okay? So that's kind of one of my presentation tactics, I guess. But just in case you can't read it, you'll never know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. Have you heard that one? That's Warren Buffett, one of my favorite financial people, right? So I was running the other day, this is first landing, and of course the tide goes out, and I was like, I remember that quote, so we're going to use that. So this is right around the corner if anybody wants to go for a hike. So, so here I am, not eating the numbers, trying to make decisions in the company, and all of a sudden, I think it's 7 words you never want to hear. We're not going to make payroll, right? Don't forget there's 185 employees, right? Not going to make payroll. What do you think happens to a DSP when their paycheck bounces, right? Are they paying their mortgage? Is there food on that table? Shoot, they're not only paycheck to paycheck, they probably already spent the paycheck that they're going to get Friday, right? Not making payroll for me wasn't an option. Like, we have to figure this out. This is life or death. Somebody actually they might get divorced, they might get evicted if I screw this up. So I took that very seriously. And I decided I have to figure out how to eat numbers. Like, this whole not eating the numbers thing, that's got to go. So this actually happened twice. One time I was just being stupid. The other time was actually an acquisition, which we just talked about in the session next door. And very kind of dark and gloomy topic, because a lot of times somebody's going out of business when the acquisition's occurring. And I realized on the second time, I'm never doing this again. Just for a show of hands, has anybody been in a company anywhere where you've thought you're about to go out of business? Anybody? Yep, got some entrepreneurs in there. Yeah, that whole table there of SSV has been like, oh my God, Chip's freaking out. There's something going on. It is a horrible experience you never want to go through when it's your fault that these paychecks are going to bounce. So that's what made me realize I have to get good at measuring and telling stories. So let's get into more of the fun stuff. Those of you that know me and know I'm kind of an adventurer. I do these expedition-length adventure races around the world with Andrea, my teammate. And one thing that you'll learn about tracking data and telling stories is every elite athlete, every endurance athlete is carrying around one of these watches that tracks everything you do, right? I know how many miles you went. You can flip it to kilometers, see the calories burned, the max altitude, the ascent and descent. I can even push it out to Strava so I can see it on a map. I mean, it's just amazing what your watch is. Some people use their phone, but you track everything. Some people even track what they're eating, their weight, what medications they're on, maybe they eat organic or not, to figure out how can you perform the absolute best. And it's really sad that we do more of this because we go jogging than we do in our own companies. So I'm going to get into some tools in a little bit to show you how to do that. On the side, this is my mountain bike, and it's kind of weird if you notice there's 2 bike computers. It's like, what, isn't one enough? Well, no, because sometimes you're in kilometers and sometimes you're in miles, right? So you have to have both. You have to know exactly how far you went to find a checkpoint at night in the rain. You know, this is the type of thing that we kind of do for fun, which is brutal suffering. But at the end of the day, being able to track the metrics and then relate it to something that's meaningful is the only way that you can kind of improve your performance or the performance of your team. And so some of the skills we're going to do here in a little bit are going to allow you to have that same capability in your company. Before we get into the really good stuff, the other thing that's really interesting about the sports data is that once you push it up to Strava, which is like Facebook for athletes, it doesn't matter if you have a Garmin or a Sunto or a Polar watch or an Apple iPhone, you can push it all up to Strava and everybody in the world can see it, they can follow you. You can have a team on Strava. Like let's say you had a step challenge in your company and everybody's gonna try to walk as many steps and you had team A and team B. They could compete on Strava and see who's winning. But the red circles that I put on here, you can see he went 100 kilometers, elevation's 59, the time was 3 hours and 34 minutes. This is a guy named Brent, he is one of our other teammates. But the main thing that's interesting is he got 12 kudos. So he went on this ride, he posts it, and his friends are like, good job, dude, that's a long ride. That makes sense? So not only did he take the data, he told a story, and he's getting feedback from his friends, right? Because the teamwork aspect of performance is very much a motivator versus just you out on a jog, right? Because if you're going to push it to Strava, you got to go a little faster because you want your numbers to look good. So that's kind of the neat part about tracking is but at the end of the day, if I go on a run and my watch, I don't have it, it's not a big deal. So that leads me to a story where data becomes extremely important, okay? We got dive certified, I think it was 4 years ago, and one of our first open water dives was in Koh Tao, Thailand, and we were getting trained on advanced adventure, which allows us to go 100 foot deep. Now, normal recreational diving is about 60 foot deep. You're not supposed to go any deeper unless you have additional training. So we are in our first week of diving after our certification, we decide we want to go down 100 feet because in Thailand there's some really cool wrecks and some other stuff down there, big schools of fish, and it's a little different the deeper you go. So we take this class, and our instructor named Scott Frost, he said, we're going to do good and all that. And I think we had about 6 or 7 people with us, probably 8. So Scott takes us down, and let me back up a little bit. Anybody who's a diver, you got to do your buddy checks, right? You got to check your weights, you got to check your regulator, you check your backup regulator, you inflate your BC and deflate it, make sure the tank's on, all of this type of thing. Because when you're diving down 100 feet, you're on a life support system. If that life support system fails, you die, right? So there's all these backup procedures. You don't check yourself, you check your buddy, back and forth. So we go in here and we're diving, and I can't remember how deep we were, but let's say we're at maybe 50. So we're down pretty deep, and we're on our way down, and Andrea's dive computer starts going off, beep, beep, and you can hear it underwater. Dive computer's not supposed to make noise unless something's wrong. So here we are, we're on our way down, 50 or 60 feet. We're already getting to our previous limit. Dive computer goes off. So what do? You freak out? No, because of our training, we hold it together, kind of check, She's showing me the dive computer. I have my backup regulator just in case she runs out of gas. I can give her my gas so we can make it back up. Dive instructor, Scott, amazing dude, nonchalantly, because he can hear it. He just waves, so we come over, and we're kind of fiddling around, and what I realized, her gas was turned on, but not enough, and the flow was not adequate, so the dive computer thought that she was running out of air. We did the buddy checks, we did everything, but when you turn on the gas, I just didn't do it enough, or she didn't do enough, and I didn't catch it. The only reason why I believe we didn't have an emergency that day is because one is we were measuring, and we had a red flag when something bad was going to happen. In the old days, people dove like Jacques Cousteau kind of days. You have like this analog dial, right? How much air do you have? How deep are you? And those are the only two metrics you have, but there's no red flag. So if we were on that old system at 60 feet, if we would have kept going, she may have been able to breathe, but at some point, maybe she wasn't able to get enough air and bad things start happening. We wouldn't have known unless we had that device. So the reason I'm saying that is measuring key performance indicators in your company a choice. We just talked to the mergers and acquisitions next door. When companies go out of business, they probably weren't looking at that thing that causes really bad things to happen. They weren't tracking it over time, like we were on this dive. It's another example. If you get into a normal company, probably does dashboards. Does anybody use dashboards? It makes you feel kind of good that you're tracking data because numbers get in a dashboard. And we actually still have a couple of these floating around the company, and they drive me crazy. But again, I can't fix everything. So here, this is another organization I'm in, and they use this dashboard, which again, it's kind of embarrassing. This is comparing events held around the world by month and then totals it, right? So we could say, wow, we're tracking data, we're telling a story. But at the end of the day, you're looking at, one is I highlighted US East, which is my region that I care about. You can tell that I'm second place, but at the end of the day, how big is US East relative to US West? I have no idea. Like, should I have more or less events than them? Why are you comparing all of these different things when they're different, whole regions of the world, completely different? So the total is completely useless, meaningless. The other thing, if you look at South Pacific and South Asia, they both are 33. So are they equal or not? Well, one is, it depends on the size, we just talked about that. But also, if you visually kind of look at the trend, 022011, they're going down. And then the one below, South Asia, is 102224. They're going up, right? But just looking at a dashboard, unless you kind of have to do all the math, you can't really see what's the trend that's occurring, up or down or staying the same. Which region is healthier? If you just looked at the number, they're 33, they're in the middle. But one's having problems and the other one's not, right? Does that make sense why dashboards, they make you feel good, but they're kind of like the don't eat the numbers, like here's the financial statements, but you can't actually use the information to make meaningful decisions in your organization. So this is the most embarrassing thing. I've heard through the different sessions, many of you are with nonprofits, right? And I believe probably it's by law at every nonprofit there's somebody that's the financial person, whatever you call them, and every meeting they're going to show you their financial statements, hopefully. Theoretically, they're supposed to be accurate and timely, which sometimes they're not. And then maybe they show you the bank account and these are the checks that cashed or whatever, right? And everybody on the board who has a fiduciary responsibility to look at these financial statements and make sure the organization's healthy looks down and they flip and they go, maybe somebody asked a question. But most of the time we all nod and go, okay, next, let's talk about membership. And the funny thing is financial statements are pretty much useless unless you really know what you're doing. So for example, does anybody negotiate with banks, right? You have a line of credit, you want to buy a car, anything like that. First thing the bank's going to ask you, can I get your last 3 years tax returns, and I need your most recent financials, right? Cash flow statement, P&L, balance sheet. So you ask your financial person, say, when's the last month that we're updated? Oh, well, it's April because May, blah, blah, blah. So, okay, great. So I go to QuickBooks and I print these financial statements, I hand them to the bank. I have no idea what they're doing with them because I've been looking at these things and I can't get any information out, but somehow the bank can figure out should they lend me money or not and what the interest rate is. And if you ask your bank, what they will tell you is that they put your financial statements through spreading software. They don't do it. They hand it off to a data entry person. They put it into software. It takes your financial statements, turns it into ratios, like this versus that, and then it shows it over time, and it relates your company to other companies your size in your field. So your debt, they can see how much debt do you have on your balance sheet relative to every other company like you in your field. So see what I'm getting at? Like even your bank they can't read the financial statements. They're going to put it into software that does the math for them. So at the end of the day, why doesn't QuickBooks or whatever financial software that you use in your company, why doesn't it give us that usable information that we need to run our companies? Or do we do this acquisition? Do we open a group home? Can I afford to change my whole day support from community engagement to group day and still go in the community? QuickBooks doesn't tell you that, right? QuickBooks is all about putting stuff in buckets. Like, it's like you spent money, what bucket does it go in, right? It's, oh, that's a this expense, or that's travel and meals, right? So accountants put things in buckets, and then HR puts things in buckets, right? They'll say, oh, we have this number of staff on the onboarding, and they say, here's the number, and then this is our average age, and there's the number, and here's the wage of this guy and the wage of that guy. But at the end of the day, all of these buckets that they're putting this data into, somebody has got to look at the data and basically do the spreads, like I was talking about at the bank. So what's missing is the title of this, which I don't know if anybody, I think, Karen, I think you came up with storification as the word. I don't even know if it's a word. It normally underlines it and says you need to change the spelling of this. Relativism is another one. It's kind of like, nobody knows what that is. It's awesome. It means basically something relative to something else. So it's looking at one bucket, another bucket, and go, hey, wait a second. So think concrete and water. Kind of matters how much water versus the concrete if you're going to make a sidewalk, right? It can't be a pint. You know, you got to have it perfectly measured, right? So somebody's got to do that. So relativism is starting to look at all of your metrics in your company. How does it relate to other metrics in your company, and can you get value from that? Ratio is like the mathematical equivalent of a relativism. So our most common is the staff to customer ratio, right? If you're in the teaching world, right, it's teacher to students, right? And then there's some regulatory body that says you can't have but so many students per teacher, or kids in a daycare per attendant, right? There's a lot of rules on that. So a ratio is just the math, 1, 2 dots, 3, or colon, whatever it is. A trend is a ratio over a period of time, because at the end of the day, if you say, you know, whatever, our profit for this month is 20%. Is that better than last month or worse than last month? Are we going up, down, and staying the same? So all of these metrics don't matter as a point in time. They only matter if you look at them over time. And then visually representing it, like when you go to your board meeting, they hand you the financial statements. If they showed it charted over time, how we're doing as an organization, you could easily, not being a financial person, look at the chart and go, wow, something's doing great or something's going wrong, right? If you saw your average checking account balance and it was going like this, you're not going to go out of business and not make payroll because you would have seen it and said, what the hell's going on? So visually representing any of your key metrics is I believe that's like the holy grail of telling the story behind the data. So now let's talk about how to actually do it. This is where you take notes and go do stuff when you get back to your office, okay? So at the end of the day, data is overwhelming. And in Kevin's presentation, he was talking about the noise. So data is noise, right? These are just numbers and there's billions of them. And at the end of the day, like he was talking about, you need to get focused on what in that data can give you the actionable information you need. And really the only way, a good story to kind of hone this in, you probably have seen it. There's a YouTube video and there's a guy with this big glass jar and he's got rocks and pebbles and sand on the table, right? And at the end of the day, it's a beautiful speech. I'm going to kill it in 20 seconds. He basically makes the case, if you want to put all the stuff in the jar, you have to start with the rocks, and then you do the pebbles, and the pebbles fall between the rocks, and then you put in the sand, and the sand falls in. And you can even pour water in it. And so it keeps looking like the jar is full, but it's not, because smaller and smaller things can go in. But if you both, when you go to work, and you start with email, you're kind of letting the sand in the jar, and at the end of the day, the rock that needs to go in can't go because it can't fit in around the sand. So data is the exact same way, where your job using this box is to find out where are the rocks, where are those ratios that you must watch because bad things happen if you don't. Okay, so the way to do this, and since we all have DSPs, and that's our biggest headache right now that keeps us up, is we can't keep enough DSPs, or maybe we can't pay them enough, or that type of thing. So what I recommend doing, 3x3s are my favorite, but you could do a 6x6 or a 2x2, whatever you want to do. But you basically take two different metrics that are trackable, and you put them in the box, and then you go and you fill in all the little boxes to find out what does that really mean. So if you look on the left side, these are your customers. I do three things. Number of customers, so it's just raw head count, the number of hours they're served, and then the number of dollars they bring in. Okay? Really easy three things to get to. You can go to your financial person. How much billing did we do on Johnny? You know, not hard. So they're going to cross the top, you go over to the HR department, you say, okay, how many DSPs, head count, how many hours are they working, and then what are you paying them? Okay, so after you've done that, now you fill in the blocks. If you notice on here, some are blue, some are light green, and some are dark green. I believe in our field, the three dark green boxes are our rocks. These are the things that you're kind of crazy if you don't watch it and watch it over time. And I will be sending my slides out. I don't know if Karen, you can send them out, but I sanitized them without too many numbers that I'm embarrassed about, and so she can save these too. Because this is stuff that I believe you can go back to your office and actually do this with your, it doesn't matter if you run a day support, or residential, or a work program, or you're the financial person or the HR person. I encourage you to take this back and do this exercise with wherever your team is to find out which of these boxes are most important to you and your team. So the three main ones that I would like to get into today, the middle one, it's called the labor hours percentage, right? Because it's the number of hours that the staff were there and the number of hours the customer were there, right? So let's say your day support is roughly 5 hours. Should your staff be there 8 hours? Like, it doesn't make sense, right? That's a whole 3 hours that you're paying your staff to be there and there's no customers, right? So it doesn't make sense. So I'm sure you guys have all had it where the staff clocks in a little early and a little late. They basically get you for about 30 minutes a day, and then that relates to 2 hours and 2.5 hours of overtime at the end of the week. You got those people, they kind of ride the clock in, ride the clock out. So if you're tracking hours in and hours out, then you can see, is your staffing enough to support the customer need, no more, no less, right? At this point, we're not talking about dollars. We're just talking about hours worked. So if you watch this metric, what you'll find is, especially if you have two different programs, you'll be able to say, wait a second, this day support, the hour-to-hour ratio is different than this day support. Why? Maybe they're overstaffing, or maybe this one has too few staff and they're understaffing. But either way, you're watching it and you're looking at it over time. And again, I'm not going to read the slides because I'm going to send them out. I can't stand death by PowerPoint, so I'm just going to generally go over this and wing it. Okay, so this is my next favorite, and the last one is the holy grail of all rocks that you should put into your jar. So this is income per hour worked. So think about that. This is really good in situations where you're multi-region, and you got some people over in Emporia or Danville, and you got some other people in Northern Virginia, right? The wages are completely different. But at the end of the day, a lot of times the customer income is the same, right? I shouldn't have used Northern Virginia, for example. Let's use Virginia Beach and Danville, right? Very different parts of Virginia. The wages are different, but the income's the same. So in this situation, if I'm tracking income per hour worked, then I can see exactly how productive those staff are, because it's like, is this person bringing in, let's say, $20 per hour worked versus this site that's only bringing in 15? And if they're only bringing in 15 per hour worked, you know you're going out of business soon, right? Because you pay your staff more than that. So that's why this is important. It's very good whenever you take the staff wage out of it and look at their hours, you can compare different programs or different regions across the state with different wage ranges. But at the end of the day, you can still go out of business tracking this metric. Because the holy grail of all, I believe, metrics is the labor dollars percentage. So this is dollars in on the customers and dollars out in your staffing. So I talked to somebody that you all know, but I'm not going to mention, about mergers and acquisitions, and he said it's very easy to see what's going on with the company. You just look at their labor percent, which is what this is, dollars in versus dollars out. 72, they're healthy and profitable. 75, doing okay. 78, they're on their way out of business. When they go in for an acquisition, all they got to do is look at that one rock, that one metric, and they can tell the health of that company. And of course, if you're at 72, your valuation's very high because you usually get a multiple of EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. And if you're at 78%, they know you're going out of business. You're on fire sale, baby. It's just a matter of time. So you're like, please come get the guys. You know, just don't let me bounce payroll. So this is the one. If you track one thing in your company from today forward, this would be the rock I would track. because if you've got this under control, you can mess up everything else. You can have too big of an office and all this stuff, because with your DSPs making 72% or taking 72% of your income, we can usually survive with what's left, even if you're making errors. Okay, so like I said earlier, tracking it over time is the only way for these stories to actually make sense, especially to somebody like your board that's not a data junkie and looking at Excel. They need to see this over time. So let me show you a chart real quick. This is, and don't kind of look at the general trend. I realize it's super small and all of that. This is real data, by the way. Again, a lot of times I do these presentations and the data doesn't look good, and I'm like, shit, I gotta go back to the office and fix this. This is actually one of them. This is payroll to DMAS billing ratio. This is payroll, meaning dollars out, not hours, versus my accrual income. And what this trend is showing me, my labor was pretty low and then labor's been creeping up. There's something wrong here. And it's not because I gave raises, right? You also think through that. If you just gave a 20% raise, then you would expect to see this type of thing. But given stasis on your wages, why the heck are we going up in labor, right? So when I see this trend, you start asking questions. Are they giving promotion? Instead of giving raises, they've given promotion. So now half the people at day support have a title and an extra $1 an hour. Like, that would cause this. Overtime getting out of control because you don't have enough staff coming in would cause that to go up, right? But at least when you see the trend, you can start asking questions and digging deeper. So that's what I did. These are real numbers, by the way, embarrassing or not. So I dug deeper and I said, okay, so what's the average dollar per hour worked? Right? Dollars per hour worked. And this is company-wide, including everybody. And so you notice there's like a climb and then it plateaus. But the difference between 8/1/18, August 2018, was $12.05, and then in May it was $12.35. That equates to $102,000 annually of just something that went like that. It's not even that bad of a trend necessarily, but when you look at the dollar's impact, that's a lot of money. 100, it wouldn't make a payroll, but still a ton of money that if we weren't watching, we wouldn't know to ask questions and ask why. Why is this going up? So then we dig a little bit deeper. We say, wait, okay, I want to know more about this. So then I divide it out and say, wait a second, let's take the salaries out of there. Because all the salary folks, you know, they're not really, I call it unit producing. At McDonald's, they called it NUP, non-unit producing hours. So I take out the NUP hours. So basically, this is just regular and overtime hours. So I'm trying to dig down into the DSPs and the mid-level management because I think that's where the problem is. Check this out, 1058 to 1074. That's only a 16 cents increase over that same period of time, which is only $47,000 annually. So I took out the salaries thinking that's probably not the problem. It's got to be these DSPs, right? And I find out, whoa, this is the salary. Something's changed in the salaries, right? The other thing is digging deeper. We don't have time to get in the presentation. Then I go, well, let's start slicing and dicing this by division. Let's look at the hours, the regular and overtime wages per hour worked, and let's compare Danville, Lynchburg, and Virginia Beach, and magically Virginia Beach was where the problem was. And we're still digging, but we probably have too many admin critters running around, not enough DSPs. Does that make sense why these rocks are very important? I was just showing, this would have been that data matrix, but just with a very quick story, I now know exactly where to go to start looking around to find the waste, to the tune of $100,000. The other thing that's kind of interesting is, this is overtime, by the way. I realize nobody can see the chart. The little, the red, the 3 dots, this is every division and the overtime percent in that division. As you can see on the top, this is Lynchburg. Their overtime's out of control, but their staffing problem is a lot worse than, let's say, Danville. Danville was kind of in the middle, and then they dropped below Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach is the blue and increasing. I look at this, and I basically, anytime overtime's down to like 2%, I'm like, cool. You know, like just that's in the noise. I don't really care too much about that. But Lynchburg, we got ourselves a problem, right? You can't run a company at 12% overtime. That part of the company is unhealthy, and if it was standalone, it would probably go out of business. So we're focusing a lot on Lynchburg right now. But if you look at the spikes, both Danville and Lynchburg occurred right on 12/21/2018. So now let's go back and look at this. Check that out, 12/21/18, spike. So not only did I figure out in this little exercise that we have too many salaries in Virginia Beach, but also that spike was caused primarily by overtime. So the curve is related to overtime. So two main data points that I learned from playing with these numbers. Let's see, anything on that? Okay, so let's go to another one real quick. This gets into telling stories with data. So this is the same overtime data, but I wanted to tell the story slightly differently. I want to go into the HR call or the scheduling call, and I want to convert the overtime dollars and hours and convert it over to something that they're going to understand a little more, because at the end of the day, they don't care if it's $1,000 or $2,000. It's not really their money, right? I'm the one stressing about this. So I relate it to how many human beings do we need to hire if we wanted to get that 100 hours down to 0 or 1,000 hours. And so you just take the number of hours and you divide it by 40. Let's just say all employees work at 40 hours a week. So then that basically tells you in Lynchburg I need to hire, well, I'm sorry, that there's 7.45 people worth of overtime. And here's also where HR makes their errors. They go, oh, we just need to go out and hire 8 people. With our turnover, you hire 8, you'll end up with 2 within 6 months, right? So they're like, no, that's not going to work. So I'm like, don't look at that number. Just take it times by 3. Lynchburg needs to hire 21 people if what they want is the end equivalent of 8 people actually working on the schedule at the locations, right? So they're not listening, obviously. I've been telling them, hire 20. No, we're going to hire 8. You know, no, hire 21. But again, we're all in a staffing crisis. They probably want to hire 21, and they can't. But at least I've taken this data. Nobody wants to hear about overtime hours. And Virginia Beach is a lot bigger than Danville, Lynchburg. I've now converted it to people that we need to hire. So as I tell the story of overtime, it's a lot more easier for them to chew on. It's also very quickly to look at the chart and see who's doing great and who's the goat that's got the issue that they need to work through. Okay, so not going to read it, but the top labor kind of thing. Labor is what we do for a living, right? We don't make widgets. We don't have raw materials. I mean, some people might. I'm sorry. Some of you guys do workforce stuff. So maybe you do have machinery and things that go bing that you have to replace from time to time. But the majority of us are just hiring staff, deploying staff, training staff, right? You guys must have a machine that goes bing. What was that, Monty Python, I think? I don't know where that came from. Yeah. So let's go over just a couple. I'm not going to read it all because I'm going to hand you the slides. So overtime hours % by division. You could look at that by dollars. You could do, and you could look at it dollars % or hours %. Pick one. Just watch it. The average hourly pay by division, we talked about that. Income per regular and overtime hour worked, because regular and overtime are your DSP. So how much money are you bringing in for every hour of DSP time? I believe that's a really important one to track, because if you end up over-scheduling, that's very difficult in our field right now. But if, let's say, somebody was a little scared and they want lots of staff milling around, that would show up very quickly, that your income per hour worked is going down. Accrual profit by pay month. The other problem, I told you about don't eat the numbers with the financial statements, because normal financial statements are run on a monthly basis, right? Some months have 20-something days and some got 30-something days, right? It's a big pain in the butt. But if you take your pay, we have 26 pay periods, right? And labor's the thing, right? It's the rock that we need to pay attention to. Things like the power bill is the pebbles in the sand. Don't pay attention to that. So if payroll is our big rock, then why don't we just divide the year into 13 pay months? Does that make sense? So you take 2 pay periods, which are typically 2 weeks. So now you have pay months containing 2 pay periods each. So now run a quarterly report in QuickBooks over that pay month or that pay quarter, and you can actually see the performance of your company, because you'll have the exact same number of Medicaid billing cycles. In our situation, we bill weekly. So in each pay month, there's the exact same number of income days and the same exact number of payroll going out. So I can easily look at my financials in that context and have very much clear insights on how the company is performing in different areas. But if you go and you run let's look at first quarter calendar like the bank wants, unless you have spreading software and a way to unpack all that and then have your CFO put notes at the bottom and go, oh yeah, there's an extra payroll, that's not going to make sense. So I'd this is another one, like write this down, go back, run your reports at your office by pay month, 13 pay months. I believe that's the best way to get the financial insights, especially into your labor. Total hours worked by division. That's just, if it's going up, you hopefully have intakes, because if you have no intakes and hours are going up, then somebody's over-scheduling. But also in our situation, is probably you guys, most of the time the hours are going down because you don't have enough staff, which starts becoming dangerous. So if your intakes are flat and your numbers on hours are going down, start looking around. Because if all of a sudden let's say you want to run your site at a 1 to 7 and now they're running at a 1 to 10 or 1 to 12, you're burning the staff out, somebody's going to get hurt, and eventually licensing is going to come poking around and cite you. So that's a good thing to track. Salary percent by division gets into your admins, like how much admin you have. And admin is like bunny rabbits, right? They procreate, like everybody wants an assistant, you know? So this is how you track that. And again, if you're not giving raises, because we're not getting raises, the way you give a raise, you just promote them. Oh, you're the assistant team leader at day support. Here's $1. And sometimes that slides through. So I've just given you a raise. So that happens. So you can track the salary, or you can track, also you can, of course, you can go to HR and you can track the employees that are not DSPs, because everybody's going to have a title in the payroll. So just run the report and look at all the not DSPs and start looking at their wages, or see what's the number of not DSPs compared to the DSPs at your day support. And if you got more admins running around than DSPs, maybe you got a problem. Maybe that's what's causing your labor costs to go up. Last one, hourly, overtime, and salary hours change by division. So you can see a lot of like the onboarding. When employees come in, they get onboarded, they go through training. It's a big hassle. You've got to pay them all this money and they're not producing anything yet. So as long as you track that type of stuff, it gives you a heads up. If you see it spike, it's probably the onboarding process. So the other people, in addition to HR and labor, that are very interested in all of these kind of charting and telling stories are going to be your finance office, or whoever's reporting to your board, who cares about the financial health of the company. So there's a billion, just like labor, there's a billion financial metrics out there, but you guys probably are not financial people, so I'm going to keep this one kind of short. Of course, you have the P&L, your profit and loss, right? So that's kind of your income and your expenses. This is like your day-to-day. You got your balance sheet, which is going to show your assets and your liabilities. So think like stuff that you own and stuff that you borrowed to own the stuff. Tracking that over time is really important. And then your cash flow statement, which is a big pain in the butt because it's the way the two talk. But the main thing is you can start looking like at, what's my profit relative to my debt service, that type of thing. So you start running ratios on the financial statements, which hopefully whoever's doing your financial office is doing this type of thing. What you're looking up right here, this is the weekly cash remit, right? So I don't care, in this situation, I don't care about accrual, right? Accrual is like, oh, they'll pay you someday. Well, that about put us out of business when we did this whole waiver thing, and they're like, oh no, you'll get paid. Guess what? It pushed our ARs from 14 days out to 31 days to the tune of like 350 grand. So I had to make 2 payrolls without income, right? So if you're not tracking your ARs, or you're not tracking your remits, then you have no idea that financial Armageddon's coming. Luckily, we survived it because we were watching and we kind of knew waiver reforms can be a train wreck, and so we prepared for it, okay? Which I highly suggest, do not believe the hype. Any big change is probably going to be a train wreck. It's going to affect your cash. So cash is one of those rocks that you pay attention to, right? The labor percent tells you what's going to happen to your cash, but also track the cash in the bank and that's coming into your company. So in this situation, you can see the cash, and of course, every once in a while, DMAS says, oh yeah, we're not going to pay you because we suck at budget, and so we're going to pay you twice next month, right? So you see it goes boom, goes to nothing, and then it doubles up and it comes right back down, right? So you can kind of see the volatility in the cash flow. But the reason I put this chart up here is that this is 18 over 19. So another story that in some situations it makes sense to tell is year over year data. So turnover is a great one to do year over year because there's times of the year that turnover occurs. Think like the holidays is going to be a lot different than July, or people coming and going from school. So don't look at your turnover numbers just on a chart by itself. Look at your turnover numbers relative to last year on a chart. And then now you can tell there definitely will be a trend, like in restaurants, it's like breakfast, lunch, and dinner is when your sales come in. You'll see the turnover trend. But if you do it year over year, now you can say, am I outperforming last year or this year? Did the raises we give have an effect? Or did the new benefits or the 401k, or maybe we got some nice supervisors instead of the mean ones that were running everybody off? You can look at that. So, so some of these data just makes sense, just look at it over time, and others it makes sense to put year over year data. Tells a much different story. And with Excel, as you can tell, sometimes you make your charts black and they look a little cooler, or you can make them look modern. You can kind of get flamboyant with that, have your own fun. So now let's talk a little bit more about the stories. I bored you to death with the data and the charts, and hopefully you've got somebody with the glasses and the slide rule or whatever where they can go crunch these numbers for you. But the main thing is you got to know what numbers to ask for, and hopefully they provide it to you, right? So that's mainly what I wanted to share with you today. And by the way, that's Da Nang, Vietnam, which I thought was like a third world country. Da Nang makes Norfolk look prehistoric. I mean, I'm telling you, it was amazing. Like, the buildings are lit up and the boats are lit up, and I mean, it's just a thriving, awesome place. My dad was a Vietnam helicopter pilot, so I took him over there. Amazing place. So I wanted to put this dragon. That's a bridge shaped like a dragon. Is that not cool? So I don't know. I wish the U.S. had a little more creativity in our infrastructure. So what story do you want to tell your referral source? Right? We've been talking a lot about just not going out of business and financial performance, because at the end of the day, that's our big job, because no money, no mission, right? But now let's get into it. Okay, so you have all this data, you figured out your boxes. Now you have to start thinking, okay, who am I going to tell the story to? So we'll start with the fun ones and work backwards into the ones that are a little more difficult. So your referral source. We could also say this is the customer, but most of our customers don't want to look at metrics and data, right? But let's say the CSB. In the future, right, we've heard a lot about value-based reimbursement and outcomes-based reimbursement structures. We are going to end up in a very competitive market. Have you guys figured that out yet? Like, things are changing, which is why I use the dive computer as an example, because if you run out of oxygen, you die underwater, unless your buddy gives you a reg. But these metrics in the future are going to be a life or death situation. So let me give you an example. Right now, we can't negotiate our income. In the workforce, I think maybe you can. But in residential and day support and all of these things, it's a fixed rate, right? You have NOVA and rest of state. Those are your choices. So all our jobs are right now is an efficiency play on how do I do the best I can within the rate. So if you want profit, it's got to be, you know, everything else is a little and you had enough profit, or if you have no profit, you can give wages and benefits. But it's all of this hodgepodge of stuff happening under your income, which is fixed, per person at least, right? Imagine the world when we go from this we don't have to negotiate rates kind of world over to the real world where you actually have to bid on things, right? So imagine you want a pool in your backyard. You're probably going to get 3 contractors, and they're going to come out and they're going to give you a quote. They're going to look around the yard. You want stone or this, you want a diving board or whatever, and they're going to come back with a quote, right? And you're probably, given that, that the underlying pool and everything is exactly the same, you're going to go with the lowest bidder, right? Kind of how we operate. When you pull out of here, you realize you're running out of gas, and there's 2 gas stations. You're going to go to the one with the lowest price, even if you have to do a U-turn, because 2 cents a gallon just pisses me off that it needs to be like the lowest possible. So we as consumers are constantly looking for the most efficient way to get what you want for the cheapest price. We are about to be flipped into that environment to where it's no longer, here's a guy that needs a place to live in a group home, and you just say, what tier? And you can easily know, am I taking this guy or not, financially speaking. What if we've got a guy, and he has this and he has that. How much will you serve him for? Imagine that. And they're going to go to 3 other providers. What are you going to serve him for? What are you going to serve him for? Think about that skill set that we don't have. I mean, our field's not, I mean, again, some of the workforce people may have that ability, but in sponsored, in-home, group home, all of this, it's a matter of what tier and, you know, can my staff have the skills necessary. But I can't imagine, even, and I've got the skill to do it, but I can't imagine we're like, hey, Chip, can we take this guy? Or sorry, hey, Chip, how much per year are you going to offer the CSB to serve this guy? Imagine how many questions I have to ask. Like, what's the staff ratio? Does he take medications? How many, you know, just 1,000 questions so that I can financially model, is that a viable a viable opportunity for the company, right? So we not only have to have that capability, which is completely different, but now also the referral source, we have been flipped over to like customer choice, right? We kind of live in this world theoretically. A CSB is going to have this like list of providers that do residential, and they're going to, the mom or dad or whoever is the referral person is going to go down the list and keep calling, and I'm support services at the very bottom. By the time they call me, they're usually pissed because everybody else didn't answer the phone, or they were mental health and they wanted a group home. And you know this process, and the CSB is not really allowed to, hey, you know, this one's kind of good, you know, they turn in their quarterlies on time. So, you know, just, you know, it's the real way to get referrals, is do your paperwork. I'm just kidding, by the way. for all the CSP people out here. So, but imagine the future to where we're going to have to go to the CSB and talk about our unique value proposition, or maybe not the CSB, maybe Anthem, maybe a managed care organization, right? They don't have to do the list of everybody alphabetical. They need a handful of providers in their network, and we fought each other to get in that network because you're out of business if you're not in the network. Or you just lost every customer that's Anthem or whatever, the WellPoint or one of these big companies, right? So all of a sudden now we have to tell the story. So in here, like, what story, how much did they engage in the community? How many friends did they make this year, right? Wouldn't that be a neat metric to track? Say, on average, in my day support, I can show you that the individuals have made 5 unique, true relationships with people if they've been with me for a year. That's data, right? I'm just coming up with this. I haven't figured that one out. But imagine that if you could demonstrate that on average, you bring somebody into my day support, I engage them in the community, and they end up with people not paid that truly care about them. What if you could demonstrate that? It would be an amazing metric to have. Participating in groups. Maybe they do a meetup or something like that. You can easily track participation in a group that's not paid staff, right? Increased family contact. A lot of families that, maybe you set up a Zoom call or Skype or one of these, FaceTime, so that mom that lives in Idaho can see Johnny at your group home or at your sponsored home or wherever. You could track that, and then you could demonstrate to the staff or demonstrate to the CSP referral source that we are very good at keeping people in touch with their family and keeping those connections, right? They don't just drop and run. We got that. So I don't need to go through all of it, but the idea is that from the referral source standpoint, it's not just about health and safety. I believe we're going to be in a situation where we're going to have to demonstrate value above and beyond the minimum standards set by licensing. Maybe it's in a house with the right ratio and the paperwork got turned on time. Now it's going to be, is the diabetes under control? Is the weight under control? Is it eating right, exercising, and making friends and having valuable connections in the community? We are not, I love doing the financial stuff because that's wicked easy compared to tracking interactions with other people, right? Our digital health records aren't really set up for that type of metrics tracking. I believe our field is going to need to be able to track those type of meaningful things if you're expecting to get referrals in the future. So the next one, what do you tell your team? What do you tell your employees, your management? That's a whole different story, right? Your employees, anytime you tell a story, of course, you want to know the motivations of the person you're telling the story to, right? Everybody's kind of what's in it for me. So the employees are listening for, when's that 401k start, which is I got pestered with last night. When are we getting raises? How much leave do I have? Or all of these things, the employees want to know all this. When we open that new day support, who's going to be the next manager? Like, can I be the next, I want to step into that new role. So you can use all of these same metrics to do recognition. For example, as you saw up there, Virginia Beach was outperforming Danville and Lynchburg in overtime. So I can show them the chart and go, rah, rah, like whoever's at the bottom of the list, or meaning the lowest amount of overtime, I'm going to give you $100, go out and have a pizza party. Right? So you can use these metrics to tell a story and then also give recognition to your staff. Staff are also very competitive. Actually, just humans in general are very competitive, right? Just like going back to the racing scenario, anybody, I'm sorry, I can't speak for everybody. In my experience, when you race, let's say a 5K or an adventure race, and you get your results, you can't wait to look at your age bracket and all this. In fact, how do I rate compared to everybody else, right? We are a hierarchical society. We want to know, how do I rate compared to you on everything, especially in sports, right? I mean, think about how fanatical. What would a Super Bowl be without a score, right? Oh, they won. What do you mean? Like, in the last 2 minutes of the game, they did a field goal in overtime and blah, 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 and like we're fascinated with that. But meanwhile, in our companies and our recognition, we don't track it like that. We just say, oh, well, everybody gets a raise regardless of your performance. Like, so we could start telling the stories of who is the winners, who is the hierarchical, doing the best, being the most productive in your company, bringing most value to the company on these metrics. So one that I'm really considering, I was just talking to them today at the table, turnover for all of us is a big pain in the tail, right? And I believe one of the main drivers of turnover is that the pipeline person that's out there kind of recruiting, turns them over to training and HR, maybe sometimes HR and then training, and then you kick them out to the services and they get mentored theoretically. That team sometimes fights. Does that ever happen with you guys? Like the onboard, like the HR, or I'm sorry, usually it's like the management. They're like, the onboarding people are bringing in people I can't use. Like I need dudes that run, and they're bringing in people who can't run, or whatever it is. There's always like that guy that has autism and he runs in the road, and I need staff that runs, or whatever it is. The program staff know exactly the type of people they need to hire, but somehow that maybe doesn't get communicated to the onboarding people who went on Indeed, and they're just, hey, you fogged a mirror, come on in. But then also you have the training, right? The training folks are like, my job is just to train them. Like, they check the box, right? We're going to do DSPO, we're going to do all this stuff, the TB test, and blah, blah, blah. So we're going to stick them in a room for 2 weeks to get all that training done as efficiently as possible. Does any of your staff remember half that stuff? No. So then we go back, okay, how do we figure out a way to drag out the training over a longer period of time so the staff actually stay? They actually get the information they need, have an opportunity to go out and test it, come back to class and say that worked or that didn't work, and drag it out over time. So I realized if we really need to get the turnover to be reduced in the company, maybe we need to figure out a metric to track that's a fair metric. Maybe the payroll software comes up with it. Maybe we do it monthly. And then basically say, hey, team, from the pipeline all the way to the support, if whatever turnover gets down to this level, we're going to give you something cool. And we're going to put you on a chart related to the other divisions. So we're going to see who's doing good and not. Right? So you've got two things. One is you got the recognition, the public recognition, or harassment if they're not doing very well, and you have a financial reward attached to that. We haven't tried it yet, but in other areas in which we've tried it, it's worked great. QADPs, for example, we used to not track documentation and not put it out in public of who was late and who was not late. And of course, the stuff got turned in late all the time. CSBs are calling, where's the quarterly, blah, blah, blah. Getting audited, now shit's on time, right? But the way we really did it is we called it the bus list, but they don't like me calling it that. Basically, there's a line on the page, and everybody who turned in their stuff on time was on the top, and everybody under the line got something late. So you get thrown under the bus, right? So I call it the bus list. Well, sure enough, people don't like being on the bus list. We now call it a progress list because it's a what? It's a progress list, right? Okay, so it's a progress list. We're going to be positive. So now everybody wants to be on the top of this thing, right? And because I did it like the person, what document they had, and their supervisor's name too. So that way the supervisor shows progress when they're on top of the line, right? So we also threw some money at it. We give rewards based on if they've been if they stay on the top for a long period of time, they get on there. And sure enough, it caused competition. People they want to be the best. They want to have everything in on time. And whatever the reward is, a couple $100 a year or whatever, is well worth it when you get audited by Myers and Stouffer, and that stuff better had been on time, and your digital health record system won't allow you to falsify anything like the old days, right? I'm kidding, by the way. Nobody in Medicaid work here? Okay, so these are just some examples of how to tell the story to your team using the data, okay? So sorry, I probably shouldn't have gone there. But before my time. Right? So what story did you tell your payers? Right? Think Medicaid. Think Anthem. Actually, think Anthem. Don't think Medicaid. Medicaid I'm sorry, not Medicaid, DMAS. DMAS are state employees. They probably are human services people, right? They probably maybe were a case manager or private sector and they moved into DMAS because government jobs pay better wages and benefits and all that stuff and they can't fire you. So these are people that actually kind of care about the services and all of that. From what I've heard from my mental health friends is that managed care is not really that same environment. The people who get hired in managed care to create networks and stuff, they're much more interested in the value-based reimbursement, and value means cheap. It's like value-based fuel shopping is which one's cheaper because fuel's fuel, right? It doesn't matter if you went to Texaco versus Wawa. I believe the environment that we're going to be in, if we move into a managed care environment in the IDDD world, we're going to be commoditized like fuel, and it's going to be a price. We're going to be bidding on it. But at the end of the day, if you don't want to, in any industry that's commoditized, it's all about price. If you're selling, let's say bricks. I'm a brick manufacturer. A brick's a brick, right? I mean, maybe there's different colors and stuff. But basically, if one dude's selling a brick that's the same brick I've got at a cheaper price, I'm not going to sell any bricks. Just like the fuel. You can't raise gas prices 10 cents. And the guy across the street keeps his low, nobody's going to buy gas, right? It's a commodity. So in the entrepreneurial world, they basically say if you don't want to, one is you don't want to be a commodity ever because it's down to price. So you have to have a unique value proposition. Why should I pay 10 cents more for your fuel when the one across the street is 10 cents cheaper? You'd say, oh, I have detergent in my fuel. I have a cool logo. Maybe I get a sandwich at Wawa, but I can't at the BP, right? So that's their unique value proposition. It's a store that's not terrible. So how can you not be a commodity in the eyes of your payer? So I got some examples up here. We're going to reduce the emergency room visits. Let's say there's a person that goes to the emergency room a lot, right? We're going to reduce that. We're going to take our therapeutic consult team, we're going to take our medical team, we're going to find out what is causing these ER visits, which are very expensive to your payor if it's a managed care environment. So if we can demonstrate that if people that come into us, we've reduced their ER visits by proactively watching their health care, that's something that's outside of just I do group home. No, I do group home, but I have this outcome that means a lot to you because ER is expensive. Fewer 911 calls. We have a lot of people that call 911 just because it's kind of fun. Cops come, sirens and all this stuff. It's really neat. So we have a lot of people that are like going to go to jail if they keep calling 911, right? So we can demonstrate through metrics and telling the story, we've reduced their 911 calls to 0. Service time and our cost. This is one I don't like talking about because I really don't want to be in this environment, but I'm scared to death it's going to occur. But what happens if in the new environment, the way to be in a network and get referrals is to say, Johnny had 80 hours a week. I'm sorry, the average Johnny that comes into my program went from 80 hours down to 70 hours. I can show that I am weaning this guy off of paid staff, thus making him cheaper on the payer. Imagine that world. And the funny thing is, if you think about that, it makes kind of sense, right? Anthem would rather go with the provider that has a reduction in hours history versus when they come to you, he becomes a train wreck, going the other direction, needs more and more staff supports and all of that. It makes logical sense in the normal business world. But imagine our business model if it's a matter of when we get in a referral, how are we going to pay ourselves less over time? That's our unique value proposition. I mean, isn't that just mind-boggling what kind of world that would be in? Increased time in natural supports, which is the inverse of that. If I can demonstrate that I actually take him to church and drop him off, or maybe logistic care takes him to church, goes to church and the church works with Johnny for 4 hours, Sunday school, all of that. And then he comes back into the program and I'm able to reduce I know group home's daily, but let's say it's in-home. I'm able to reduce my in-home hours because I helped him get natural supports, right? That's a metric that we can track, that we would be able to demonstrate to a payer that we have this track record of reducing their cost, which is the value in VBR, right? Let's see anything else on here that's interesting. Fewer serious incidents, compliant with medications. I think I was reading a metric somewhere, and this isn't IDDD world, but it was like something like more than 50% of all hospital visits or bad things that happen are because of non-compliant medications. Like if everybody would just take their medications as planned, like 50% of the healthcare would go away. Think diabetes and stuff like that. And then reduction in tier. So imagine that this is an easy one to track, and we actually should be tracking this, by the way, is when somebody comes in your organization, what happens to their tier? Because of course they redo their SIS. They went from whooping you to living a good life in the community with their friends. That sounds like a 2 to me as opposed to the 4. A unique value proposition to your payor might be when they come in as a 4, it takes me about a year, but I can get them down to a 3 or 2 on average. Payor is going to be delighted because provider B down the road is taking them from a 2 to 3 to 4 because they're trying to increase their income, right? Let's get this guy spun out so I can increase the tier, especially right before the SIS assessment. In this new system, the stories that we tell our payor is going to be extremely important, and I believe you're going to need data to show it. You can't just say, we do a good job. He's happy. That crap worked in the past. It's not going to work in the future. So let's get into next steps, and then we'll do some questions. I assume the majority of you probably don't like doing Excel, looking at numbers and charting like I do. And I'm definitely not saying that you should, nor want to go back and learn Excel. But if you are intrigued and inspired to go learn some Excel, I did put some links in here to help you out, okay? And this is the way we pretty much learn the majority of this. It's not professional training. I mean, it's kind of like Fred Pryor. There's one of these, they come around from time to time. You pay them a couple $100 and you go to Excel and advanced Excel and pivots and charts and all of that. I've really learned a lot from the Fred Pryor stuff. And it's very affordable. And think about this, if you're basically a leader in your organization and you make a 1% change, it's a lot of money, right? 1% is easy to do if you start tracking labor. 1% change, and maybe you paid Fred Pryor $300 and took a day at a workshop to figure out how do you yourself do the math on or crunch the numbers. The second one is the most fun, which is Excel is Fun. It's it's Excel's Fun, EXCELLS Fun on YouTube. This is a guy that runs a college out, it's like a vocational school, I think, out somewhere middle America. And he does, it doesn't matter what Excel, anything in Excel. And he's done a YouTube video where you're watching his cursor on the screen and he's walking you through it. Everything from financial stuff to HR to selling boomerangs. He used to own a boomerang company. If you want to learn charting, pivot tables, whatever, just put in charting on his page and there'll probably be 25 videos showing you very easily how to do charts in Excel. Okay, so this is not difficult and you don't even have to go to Fred Pryor, you just go to the Excel is Fun thing. Also, the main things that you want to look at in Excel that I use to crunch numbers are tables, right? The table is like the dashboard I showed you earlier. That's a table in Excel. It's not just like, it's not a word. It actually means something in Excel. It means it's sortable and it's colored. And so learn how to do tables and tabular formatting. It's a super cool tool. The next are pivot tables, which are wicked awesome. I could do like a whole presentation on pivot tables. Basically, it allows you to manipulate a table very quickly and easily without messing with the underlying data. Again, go to Excel's Fun, look up pivot table, or just YouTube pivot table. There'll be 1,000 videos showing you how cool they are. Charts, which is looking at it visually over time. And of course, you saw yesterday at one of the legislative thing, we were looking at pie charts. I think that was this morning. Wow, stayed up late last night. Pie charts, you know, they showed how much of the pie is broken out. Medicaid's like a Pac-Man kind of eating everything else. So charts are a very good visual way to show non-data related people the impact of either decision you made or what's happening over time. Slicers is another really, really cool one. I don't use them enough, but I should. If you're giving a presentation to your board, let's say you have 3 different divisions or 4 divisions or whatever, or you have different services, group home, in-home, et cetera, and you want to very quickly change the chart to be relevant to that service, you can take a slicer. It's just this little tool. It'll say group home, day support, whatever. When you click the button, you just see group home. Then you click in-home, and now it's just in-home. You say, hey, let's compare group home to in-home, and you click it, and click the 2 of them, and then both are there. It just very quickly makes the charts change without really having to do anything. So they're wicked cool when it comes down to very quickly processing information. So another example of that, if you're not doing a presentation, Andrea and I, through all of our expenses, like this big, long, huge length of the GL of all the expenses that we had, because we're trying to figure out where is this money going. And we were able to use a slicer to throw each expense through a chart very quickly and go, oh, let's look at telecom. Let's look at meals and entertainment. Whoa, like, what's going on? They're spending too much money. You know, you could just quickly use a slicer to chop all that information up once it's been in a table. So it's really, really cool. Your finance team probably knows about them. The other one, and this is my workstation, by the way. Like I said, all the pictures are from recent. Everywhere I am, other than a laptop, I have 3 monitors. Especially if you're in finance, you're going to have QuickBooks open, you're going to have Excel open, because QuickBooks is pretty much useless. It's just the buckets. Excel's how you like figure out what's in the buckets and the ratios between. If you're not looking at Excel and QuickBooks, you're getting your buckets kicked. Like your company's going to kick the bucket. Highly suggest if you want to get into this on your own, do 2 monitors at least. The third that's vertical is really cool for Outlook. Like your email, like that inbox that's got 1,000. Really easy to sort your email when you have a big monitor vertical. So that's kind of a luxury that I indulge in. One is also, do not use outdated Excel. Or if you were in charge of your software, if you've got, Excel 97 through 2003, like that's bad, like really bad. So please, anybody who wants to do any of this stuff, or it's their job, please get them the most recent version of Excel. Okay, just bite the bullet, pay the money. It's worth every dime. Don't use Google Sheets or some garbage like that. Come on. It's Excel. You're professionals. Let's use professional tools, okay? Excel's got a lot of stuff that Google Sheets and other knockoffs don't do. And then if you're super cool like Eric Williams, use Tableau or Grow. These are another software you buy that is even cooler than Excel. I haven't felt the need to get there because I don't need fancy. I just need to look at the chart over time and try to figure out where the problem is. But basically Tableau I think is the one that's fairly affordable. And if you want to get into really cool graphical representations of data, so bubble charts and all the cool stuff, like your payroll software probably has a dashboard feature. They're probably using some kind of, I think they call it business intelligence engine, similar to Tableau or Grow, to take that data and show, make it relevant. So another example of that, my payroll software has, I can look at turnover by supervisor. So I can see like a supervisor and the bubble gets bigger and bigger like the more people that they've terminated, right? So you see a little bubble, like let's say your kind of admin critters, because usually they don't come and go too much. So you'll see they got a little tiny bubble down here, and then you see like the program staff or the ones that are dealing with a lot of the DSPs, they got this big bubble, right? And it shows you how many people in there. So that type of cool stuff, Excel might be able to do it, but it's Tableau or other software. It's a better way to solve that problem. So let me see if I covered all of that. Good. Okay, so that's the basic nuts and bolts of storification of your data using some of these tools. At a minimum, let's rewind the clock for a second. The minimum that I strongly encourage you to do in your company is take that little 3x3 and just don't even do the math on it. Just put the whatever's important to you. It could be staff and customers. It could be income by division. Just take two things and go down to each box and have a discussion with your team about that box and is it or not important. Just have that discussion. And if you decide like labor dollar for dollar percent, if you decide, holy crap, that's a rock, that's really important. If we tracked that, whatever, we get a referral, we can tell our payor this, we won't go out of business because it's cash, right? If you find that box, take it to your finance people, hopefully, or your HR team and say, I'd really like to have this number, and can you give it to me over time on a chart, right? Because even if you guys are out there kind of doing the normal day-to-day work of human services, you've got some number cruncher at some office somewhere who knows how to use Excel. And if you went in there specifically asking for that number that really means a lot to you and your program, they can probably chart it and hand it to you so you don't have to mess around with Excel. Okay? Highly suggest that. The other is, and this worked very well for us, hopefully you have, we all probably have too many meetings, but start incorporating the data and the charting into your meetings. So basically it's like an accountability. It's not, hey, how are you doing? Everything's fine. How are you doing? Everything's fine. Like everybody's supposed to be like a morning huddle and, what did you do yesterday? What did you do, or what you going to do today, and where are you having a problem? What if also you have a chart that says, here's how we've been performing. Here's our income over time or whatever. What's going on with this? What's going on with that? So every single pay period, the Monday following, we're usually looking at all of these metrics. We're looking at the number of hours, the wages going up and down, how many employees do we need to hire in XYZ division. We use the charts. To the point where they probably are just irritated looking at it. But the thing is, when you do measure something and you understand it and it's meaningful and it tells a story, you will see a change as opposed to not charting it, not looking at it. Okay, at the end of the day, hopefully this has given you some very tactical takeaways that you can go back in your company. What we're here to do is help people with disabilities, right? That's what we want to give them a good life in the community. Knowing what we found out about the fact that we're not going to get raises anytime soon, right? There's not going to be a rate refresh no matter how hard Karen tried. We know labor costs are going up because we're in a very robust economy. We heard that today, right? We heard unemployment is at an all-time low, and it's probably just going to get lower because the Fed's going to continue to kind of stimulate. So, and if you're in a bigger city, people are being drawn to the cities, so there's new employers in town, right? Here in Virginia Beach, we had ADP, or actually Norfolk. ADP came in, Lidl, Wegmans, all these employers are coming. They're eating up all of our DSPs, right? So what I'm trying to make the case is find your rocks using some of these tools, because like the dive computer, you need to know when something's going wrong. You need a red flag. You need to know what are those rocks that if they go wrong, it puts you in a scenario like I was in where we were about to not make payroll, okay? So I think that's it. I think I'm good. So I really, really appreciate you guys allowing me to be at the conference to do the speech. I always prepare these with intent to get as much information in your head as possible. so that you can actually go back and make a difference in somebody's life. So hopefully I accomplished that today. So thank you so much.